Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's AU eRequesting TDG. Got another full agenda of things to get through today. So we've got our usual business. Then we've got, continuing on from our last TDG, we've got proposals for the eRequesting features been working through. So we'll do some walkthroughs of these task group, the sequence of orders. We'd agreed on those concepts, but we've got them in an IG branch now, so we can walk through them and show the TDG that. If we get there, I don't think that we will, but it's on their understanding item on the agenda for the moment when we get to it is an update on the pregnancy status, which is the outstanding item from ballot for comment. And then we'll talk about the next meeting where we've got the Connectathon and a work group day coming up. So we'll have a quick chat about that as well. So to get into it, usual business, we'll look at approval of minutes from the last meeting. So these were sent out a week ago, I think it was. I'll just jump to the right screen there. So these are minutes from 16th of January. Shelley's prepared those. We sent them out for review. Got decisions in there. Has everyone had a chance to have a look? Is anyone interested in making a motion to approve these minutes?
Yeah, Jenny Whale, I make a proposal to accept the minutes as written.
Thanks, Jane. We have a second.
Hi, Michael, Yoni from AG. I'll second it.
Oh, thanks, Yoni. All right, I will launch a poll for that as soon as I find the button again. Polls. Approval minutes. Let's launch that one. Hopefully you'll now see a poll. Yep, it's coming through. Just wait for that number to stabilize. About 75% of people voted. If any stragglers. Okay, might close that off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll. So we had, get this number right. We had 18 affirmative, had 0 negative, and 10 abstain. Did you get that, Michael?
And +1 for me, so that's 19,
Oh,
0, 10.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to next. So these are just some action items here. I don't think we need to go through any of these. These are some old action items. They're still just here to remind us. I'll come back to them at some point. The key one at the bottom there is about the CDG and TDG harmonisation group, which will help us resolve any issues between CDG and TDG. That's in progress. We're looking at how we're setting that up and how that might operate. So no updates for those. The next, I suppose this isn't usual business, but it is sort of TDG co-chair business. I did send out last week sort of the proposal that the co-chairs are looking to appoint some additional interim co-chairs. So this is to ensure that the AU eRequesting TDG meets the ongoing needs of the TDG. We're looking to appoint 2 interim co-chairs until the end of the current term. So based on the HL7 decision-making processes we have in this TDG, we're able to appoint co-chairs for an interim basis until the next election, to the end of the current term. So that current term is to December 25. I think HL7AU is still working through the process for the next election. But as a TDG, we can actually appoint new co-chairs by having a vote in the TDG, and they'll be interim co-chairs until up to the end of the current term, which is December 25. So the two proposals that are here is Jeremy Sullivan is stepping down as a co-chair, and Jai Dacey from DOHAC is offering to fill that role. We also have Megan Doherty from the Australian Digital Health Agency is proposed as an additional interim co-chair. So just on that, we can do that through our standard decision-making processes with a motion, second, and majority vote. If you're interested in the detail, it is through the HS7A Governance and Operations Manual, which talks about our ability to be able to increase the number of co-chairs and also about reappointing through a vacancy, through a voluntary vacancy of the co-chairs. Would someone like to make a motion for any of these to appoint some interim co-chairs to assist the TDG moving forward?
Yeah, I'll motion that motion.
Thanks, Joe. Oh, sorry, we might do them separately. So did you want to motion one of those?
I'll motion for Jai Dacey to fill in the role of co-chair.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, David. And I will launch a poll for that. So this is the appointment of Jai Dacey as an interim co-chair to replace Jeremy. You should see a poll now. The numbers seem to be stabilizing. We'll just give it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that motion has passed. We had 26 affirmative. We had 0 negative and have 8 have abstained. So welcome, Joe. You'll be joining us in the co-chairs. Would anyone like to make a motion on the second?
Yep, it's Christy. I'm happy to make a motion for Megan to become an interim co-chair.
Great, thank you.
I'm happy to
second that. David, second that as well. All right, I'll launch another poll. So this one is to appoint Megan Doherty as an additional interim co-chair to the TDG. Okay, should say that one. This is for appointing Megan. Give that one another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that now. So that motion has passed as well. We've got 25 affirmative, have 0 negative and 6 abstained. Thank you. It's a good outcome. More co-chairs to help run the TDG. It's a good thing, definitely. No. Welcome, Jai, Megan. You'll get your turn at hosting some meetings now, moving forward. Share the love. Just some other updates. Just ballot for comment still lingering around. We have reconciled 54 of the 55 issues. The only one outstanding is the pregnancy status, which we will come back around to, and we'll likely go to the harmonisation group for just resolution around that as well. I don't think we've done many more updates to the IG. There's still a few pending there. We've done about 30 or 36 issues in the IG. So this is still ticking away. We will close out developer comment as soon as we can, but just letting everyone know it's still there and we haven't closed it out. Moving on, I think Michael Osborne was going to give us an update on some HL7 value set conventions, some technical correction in the IG for these.
Yep. If you want to go to the next slide, Michael. Okay, so as one of the feedbacks so some of the feedback we got on AU base was that we really needed to conform to the NCTS composed value set profile for our value sets. And that means a few things. So one of the things is that we need to have an identifier in all our value sets. So at the moment, our value sets are all bound within the FIRE IG, the eRequesting FIRE IG. But really they should be rooted in terminology.hl7.org.au, like all of the AU base ones are, and also have an OID. So there's an OID is an object identifier. It's mainly used in CDA documents, but it's just something that we've always put into value sets. So if you just want to go to the next slide, Michael. Okay, so the root OID will be the HL7 AU OID, and that's it there, 2.3. And so all of the value sets logically exist under terminology.hl7.org.au/value set. So if you go to that, Michael, if you just go to that OID register, that link, HL7, yeah, that's the one. So this is where HL7AU registers all the OIDs under their namespace. If you go down the page a bit, you'll see the value sets and code systems. Okay, so now we're sort of getting into the territory of AU base there. And further down, you'll see some for eRequesting. So just stop there. So there's eRequesting coverage type and self-pay. There's eRequesting request status, and there's eRequesting task status. Those are the new URIs, which you'll find in the latest eRequesting IG, in those bindings to request status and task status. And because this is kind of a breaking change, but it's also a technical correction because the way we set it up originally wasn't quite right. Those URLs were within the IG itself, so they would have been the name of the IG/the value set ID, and so now they're all correct, technically correct, per that profile. So I guess it's just letting you know that there's been a change to those value set names in the IGs. And I guess if there's any questions, happy to field those now.
Yep, so this was a technical correction that Michael's been doing. It's being applied to the IG, so it was just this opportunity to let the TDG know about those changes and why they were made. So if anyone's got a question, we'll have to do it. Happy to answer it now. Otherwise, Michael's always available to answer questions if you have them. Yep. I don't think there was any more detail there. All right. Might move on to our eRequesting proposals that we're working through. So we discussed this one in the last TDG. It's about the use of task group. We agreed on some of these principles about a common task base with individual fulfillment tasks, linking a set of fulfillment tasks together, and then distinguishing the tasks using a tag. So we voted on the the intent of this last meeting. Oh, Jamie, yeah.
So I was just going to say, Michael, I'm just pushing one last change to the task group branch. If you wanted to start with something else, it should be built in a couple of minutes. Sorry.
All right, that's okay, that's fine. We'll come back around to this one, but basically what the intent is today, what we're going to do is now walk through a branch that has more detail with these changes in it, and agree that that's what we want moving forward. So let's jump to the sequence of audit tests for exam. Same deal. We talked about this in the last meeting. We talked about adding a sequence extension to the service request that could be used for the display sequence of the tests if they're shown on a screen that would mimic what's on the paper. So we had agreed on that intent, and now we've got a change that I think Andy can walk us through. I will copy this link in the chat so everyone can follow along at home. Check. Get the right one. Task group, display sequence. This is it here. Just make sure it's on the list. I'll put it in the chat as well. So this is just a feature branch that's in our IG, so we can walk through it. And it will be on diagnostic request. And here we have display sequence. Andy, did you want to talk to it?
Yep, just finding mute. There's nothing too surprising about this one. It's made it optional at the moment. I also, for many of this, I deliberately left off must supports as a discussion point. The main thing was just to have a look at how this would appear in the IG. Michael, if you click on the actual URL.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do use your URL, then we made the integer mandatory, so you can't kind of use the extension and then not have the sequence number in there, which kind of makes sense. And as we talked about previously, it's just a number. The intended use would be a sequence, an iterative sequence of numbers across the set of individual service requests that would reflect the intended interpreted sequence by a filler that extracts the service requests, be they radiology requests or pathology requests, from the order. Any questions? I don't know how, Michael, whether you just want to run through these kind of at this very high level now without, well, Angus does, of course he does, without getting into the detail of them, because at some point, obviously, we'd have to kind of fill out obligations and the must support associated with these, but I don't know whether we want to go depth first or breadth first in this.
Yeah, I'll let Angus go, and then we might come back around to that.
You're gonna hate my comment. So why are we restricting this to diagnostic reports? Why don't we just make it display order? Use it on whatever you like. Like, why isn't it back down at core or something? Like, isn't this use case going to pop up all over the place?
I actually had that same conversation last Friday as well. That this is potentially something that could go into AE base. All right.
Well,
as an extension.
As an extension for service request?
No, well, yes, for service request, but other things as well.
And it's just an extension for any resource you like. Well, you know,
but it doesn't really make any sense for any resource because
okay,
that
so
resource
for
would
others.
have to
My point would be the URL shouldn't say diagnostic request display order. It should be just display order. and then reusable by other projects for where seen fit.
Yes. I think baby steps. You could certainly
Baby steps. Yeah.
argue to take this into AU base as a foundation of service request and AU base. Given, because obviously it's the reason we're doing this is the particular way in which grouping the groups of things are referenced in FHIR. So if you have an explicit list, you have an explicit order. If you don't have an explicit list, so you don't have one-to-many references to something, instead you have what consent does and what other things do, where you have a reference from something else to it, then that's where it comes into play. If you're never using that pattern, so you always have an explicit list, obviously sequencing information is redundant in that sense.
For me, it's no skin off my nose putting it here as it is. For me, it's more Danielle sparked bigger question of, to me, it just seems screaming for reuse later.
Well, I think the correct, given the generality of it, the correct way would be to raise this into an AU base discussion, because I think that's it is very generic, as you say, as a technique to provide that order. So I'm happy to raise it at the next working group meeting. To a window.
Just along, yeah, it make more sense to have somewhere common, but along, do we need a search parameter, custom search parameter over it so we can sort using this? So if we are using this display order extension anywhere in any service.
It's a yes, it does need, I think, to be added as an additional search parameter, because you would obviously want to potentially search on this as well. That's probably the question to raise as we go deeper into how it's going to manifest in terms of obligations and searching, Michael.
Yeah, I suppose on the obligation approach here, one of them, which we've kind of done before, is flag things as must support when we've identified the element to add it with the cardinality. And one of the problems with that approach was that we can't then add it to a capability statement until we have an obligation for the actor as well. So we've got 4 actors: the placer, the filler, the server, and the patient. And so if we're saying must support, we're saying there is an obligation, then to add it to a capability statement, including things like the search parameters and anything else that we're doing, we need an obligation for at least one of the actors to be able to add it to their capability statement. So the approach could be that as we go, we do the must supports and we do the obligations that we think we can. Alternatively, maybe it's something where we come back around after we've got through all of our core profiles, that we come back and revisit obligations across all the profiles in a sort of wave of that to work out and refine those obligations and must supports. But open to the TDG to how they might, what they might think might work better.
No, yeah, I'm not. I can see a use case for search parameter, but I'm also just not screaming for it, is it? Like I can just sort locally and get my set and sort. I'm not denying that being able to sort from the server is something, but it's certainly usable without having it.
We might then try and address the first question though, is whether we want to define this extension or we want to push it to base to get them to define it and then we'll reuse it. That's probably the first question.
I personally wouldn't bother. I think we should just plow on ahead, and then if it does get taken up by base, we can make the change. It's no skin off our nose at that point. But I'd say we just continue on with as complete as we can at this point, and we move to match and reuse the emerging base property.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually of different opinion. I think we should defer to Fireware Group, and if the Fireware Group decides that this is not something that should go into AU base, then we should proceed and define extension in the eRequesting OG. But yeah, or we can have a workaround option now. But in either case, I think we should refer to Fireware Group, because I don't think that the Fireware Group will go and look into all downstream IGs to decide on which definitions they will pull into AU base. So it should probably come from us.
Given this isn't probably critical for us to get a quick decision on, is that the potential options? We go to the Fireware Group first, and then we don't get any progression there, we come back to this one and push it in.
We just do it in parallel. Just keep doing this, do that as well. If they take traction, if they're like, can we put this in with like a draft? Like this is, you know, it's level 0. It's kind of like, but it's still here, so we can still use it in connectathons. We have the idea cemented in, but we're very open to the fact that in a couple of months from now, that URI may change because it goes to base.
I would agree with that.
Does someone want to make a motion along those lines? If that's the case, that's where we would go.
You voice it, Angus. I'm
I'll motion that we continue with what's on screen as is, but we also engage the Fire Working Group about whether they want to take this up to be part of base, with us incurring the slight annoyance if that is who happens. We'll decommission ours and take up theirs. And for any implementers that have actually jumped on top of this, they would have to just, hopefully all they have to do is change the URI. So take both in parallel, do both.
I second Angus's.
Jamie?
Can I just flag, so the extension as is references diagnostic request in the ID and I think the computable name. Oh, sorry, yeah. Can I suggest an amendment that we keep it as a general AU eRequesting display sequence extension, as in it's generic, I guess?
I also think that some minor changes are needed to apply conventions and change. for example, I don't think we need the slice value. We can just value X is a choice of data types. So we can just assign or type it to integer without slicing. So there are some minor changes to be applied. So I think I'd like to remove as is and just keep the motion to the general intent to add the extension to the IG without specifying as is, because that to me indicates that as everything that we are seeing now will stay as it is.
So if we're going with parallel for this one, I'm happy to take changes. We have changes, so we don't need the slice. I agree, just an integer. But can we state the changes that need to happen to this one? And then there just is this sidecar that we're also going to engage the FHIR working group about them creating something in their world. And of course, theirs will not be pinned to, I assume, will not be pinned to diagnostic service request. It won't talk about diagnostic service request. But from an implementer's point of view, I'm hoping the transition from one to the other is no more than the URI changes for the extension. I can't guarantee that, but that's what we write this ship so it's Ducey's changes are in there. And hopefully when FHIR working group take it up, if they do, if we're lucky, the only thing they'll change is the URI. Like from an implementer's point of view, all the words will change, but if I've created a resource with this extension on, the only difference between the new base version of it, I'd like to think, is the URI changes. The integer will still be an integer. The URI will change to something you call base.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the goal I'm trying to get to is I want to use this now. I want to use this now. And if in 6 months from now there's a new one and this is decommissioned, then hopefully all I have to do is change the URI and I'm done.
I think that's fair. I was just wondering about Ducey's comment about removing the diagnostic request from this. Is still in eRequesting, still living in the eRequesting IG as one we implement in the eRequesting IG. But is there anywhere else we could potentially use it in eRequesting where it wouldn't be attached to diagnostic requesting now or in the future? Whether it's just a generic eRequesting display sequence, which may turn into an AU-based display sequence, but not 100% tied to diagnostic request. I think
If we need to type it, can we make it at least a bit wider, applicable to service requests rather than diagnostic request?
I like Andrew's idea. So it's going to be FHIR eRec structure definition AU display sequence. Yeah.
Okay, so we're removing diagnostic request altogether. And we're just giving display sequence in the URL. I like that.
And then hopefully when it goes to base, all that's going to change is the eRec part.
Yes. Yes.
What about removing AU as well? Because AU is already in the first part of it.
True.
I assume we have standard naming conventions for our
yes, and that's part of the changes to apply all the standard conventions to URL and descriptions and yes.
So I'll see if I can reword this or reiterate what we're talking about here is that we're proposing to put the eRequesting display sequence in with this intent being a generic eRequesting display sequence. We'll also go to the FHIR work group to see if there's any interest in them adding it to AU base. Does that capture what we just discussed, summarised it as the motion? And you agree to that, Angus?
And the slice, Ducey's point about the slice and the integer.
Yeah, I think the intent is it's an integer, exactly how we implement the integer. The IG developers can make sure that's right.
Yep. Yes, I second Michael's proposal.
That's my I'm chair. I can't motion it.
Oh, you can't vote.
So I was rephrasing what I thought we just discussed. So if that's what you agree, you can say that's yes, you agree
Yes.
that's the motion, and we
I
reaffirm
propose.
second.
I propose Michael's words.
And does the second still stand, Andy, on those? That 10?
Yeah,
someone
that's
else?
fine.
Yeah, still, okay. All right. So are we clear enough about what we're voting on? Are there any other questions before I launch the poll? Launch the poll. To the poll.
+1 for me, Michael.
And that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have a 27 plus 1, so that's 28 affirmative, 0 negative, and 5 have abstained. So that motion has passed. Just going back on must supports, is there any interest in anyone proposing must support and/or obligation or and obligations or anything at this point in time? So I think we've got options here is to flag it as must support, and we'll come back to obligations later, or we flag it as must support and identify the obligations now because they're obvious, or we do nothing now. So happy for anyone to. We will have to do obligations at some point. It's whether we're doing it now or we're coming back around to it later.
I feel like it is must support, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
as a receiver, I really want this. I want the placer to populate this. Otherwise, I'm going to display things wrong.
So yeah, I mean the placer populated known might be an obvious one that if you know a sequence and you care about it, you do it, right?
Well, is it stronger than that? Like, how can you place an order without a sequence?
Well, what if it's 100% electronic? There's no paper.
But there is still a sequence. The doctor.
Oh, we have actually said it's optional too. It's 0 to 1. So cardinality is 0 to 1. Oh, actually, sorry, this is probably, we do need to agree on the cardinality, right? We talked about adding an extension, but we haven't agreed on the cardinality and must support.
So my mind is that inherently a requesting doctor creates a sequence. It's impossible. I feel like it's impossible for him to place an order with more than one item and then not be a sequence, right? How does that happen? Isn't there always a sequence that matters?
Doesn't that come back to this has a very distinct focus for why sequence is being carried, and in this case we said it was carried because of paper, and the reconciliation of the paper and the digital. If there was no paper involved and it was purely digital, and we said before that the order, because I made the argument also that the actual order the clinician created the test within may have some meaning, but if we're saying it's not just about the reconciliation of paper and digital, but there's an order in digital anyway, then we should probably expand the foundation of why we're doing this to cover more than just the paper digital reconciliation.
Well, I don't think it's just the paper. It's reconciliation across digital to digital. Like in your best practice system, the doctor sees it in this order and he's talking to the lab and we see it in the same order, both digitally.
Oh, I believe you. But previously when I've kind of said that there is a digital kind of meaning to this, there was more that was saying, well, we're not sure what that is, but we know about the paper digital reconciliation, because the as you say, you could get a phone call, a conversation where the two are looking at it through different lenses. I don't mind that.
Does anyone think of a reason why it's going to be problematic that you need to provide a sequence, display sequence, and you just don't know it? Are you composing many disparate orders into one new one? You don't know the order? Is that a thing?
My argument would be that it's still a valid order without a sequence. And, you know, if you've got a sequence of one, because there's only one test, you know, are you still going to do you have to still put a number in there for that?
Just for simplicity, I would say yes. Like I have an order, I have one and this is order one. I only say that because I don't want to get orders where it is populated because there's two and orders where it's not populated because it's one, because I want to write code that says just sort on this thing, not null check that they all have it. Now get the ones that do have it, sort those and put the other ones at the end. You know, like I'd rather just a simple rule that is they all have it if I can, you know, and then I just sort by that order. I can null check them all. It just seems weird. Then you're going to have like what, some have it, some don't, for some random reason.
You're probably going to have to null check regardless on everything, right? So the whole thing doesn't follow. But anyway,
true.
Is it one that we don't know enough about yet, and it's for testing at a connectathon, leaving it as 0 to 1 for now, and firm it up later, or is it one of those things where if we don't do it now, we never will?
Well, if you leave it 0, the only use case I can think of where don't provide it is where there's 1, right? As soon as there's 2, what is the argument that says you're not going to provide it? Like
I don't care.
But who are you? Are you the doctor who placing the order? You don't care that the downstream systems don't know the order you placed it in? Like, I mean,
we have an underlying assumption, don't we, that the underlying system doesn't always know the order? Because don't we allow people to give duplicate numbers? So we allow for all sorts of degenerate sequences, like a sequence of 1s or sequence of 2s. And so even if you don't provide anything, there is then an order within the valid definition of order that we use implied, which is 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 or whatever.
True.
Wow, I was shot down last week for suggesting that. So, but if we were going to, I think, determine that wasn't valid, then we would need to put some kind of constraint in to disallow common sequences.
But I'm all for allowing common sequences. So you can go 1 1 1 1 1, but what you can't do is 1 null null 1 1, right? Like I'd rather consistency. It's always there. If you set it to 1 1 1, I don't care. I'm just going to sort it whatever random order that comes out as. But it's more problematic if it's like null 2, null 5, null 1, null 1. You know, it's like
we can put a constraint in that enforces if you're going to use it, has to be there for everyone, or if you're not using it, it should be there for no one.
Yeah, you should do that.
We're getting into
so for the person who does not have an order, so I'm an implementer placing the order, and this is mandatory, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't have an order. I don't know how to set this. Don't they just set it to 1 1 1 1 1? And they probably won't do that. They will probably go 1 2 3 4 5 because they didn't think it through. Like if they don't have an order, then they're making up an order. At least for me, the filler, I've got an order. The placer, I've got a filler, I've got an order. And I've tried to abstract that order from the person who placed it. If they want to say they don't have an order, well, then their random order is as good as anyone else's.
Angus, it sounds like you might be making a motion here.
I motion that it is 1.1 cardinality must support.
Do you want to add any obligations there with the placer or populate?
Yeah, so places populate. so I'm not going to get the right word. Not if known. They're always going to populate. Populate.
If a cardinality is 1, it'd probably be similar to the requisition.
Yeah. Yep. Placer has to populate, a filler has to handle. Yep. Like that one. So I propose that display sequence cardinality and obligations will equal to what we see on screen for requisition, 1-to-1 with the same obligations.
1-to-1. Placer shall populate, filler shall handle.
Server shall handle.
Server shall handle. Server shall populate when it's serving it back up, and the patient knows.
Shouldn't patient handle? Shouldn't the patient see it in the same order too?
Yeah, happy to be a proposer.
So sorry, yep. So the only difference would be patient also has to handle, because we want patient apps to also display it in the same order.
Anyone want to second that motion?
I'm happy to second that.
Thanks, Jay. I'll launch a poll. Any other questions before I launch the poll? So this is a poll on display sequence cardinality of 1-to-1 must support with obligations of server, placer shall populate, filler shall handle, server shall handle, server shall be able to populate, and the patient shall handle. Oh, sorry, I thought I'd launched the poll. There we go. Should launch now. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 26 affirmative, 1 negative, and 7 abstain. So that motion has passed. Did you get all that, Michael? So,
Yes, sorry.
yeah.
Fumbling with my audio.
Yeah. Okay. That was the easy one. That's good. We're working through the process. We'll jump back now to task group. So this was the one we discussed last week as well. Andy's going to create a branch for us to walk through. I'll copy that, put it in the chat so everyone at home can walk through it as well.
Well, technically, I didn't create the branch.
Technically, you didn't. You filled the branch with stuff.
Just to be pedantic.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to still drive and you talk?
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah.
So task is going to be a continuing thing we come back to for other workflow-like requirements. In this case, we previously talked about the separation of the service request and task. This task introduced this work introduced the concept of a task group. We previously had AU requesting task, so kind of moved that off to be called AU requesting task fulfillment. So that is in theory the child task. So it's the one-to-one relationship between the fulfillment task and a service request being a single test or service being asked for in the order. The group is a container for those. The relationship is, if you click on, let's go to task fulfillment first. So task fulfillment is a kind of task that is a part of a group. So I've said you must be part of a group. So even if there's only one child task, it's still part of a group, and the focus for any child is either a pathology request or an imaging request, because those are the two that we've defined. And we have introduced a tag to differentiate the type of task. This just makes it easier to process. There's two types of tasks currently, fulfillment tasks and group tasks. And this just lets you easily distinguish. We went through alternative approaches the other week, but this is the approach I've introduced in this one. And now if you go back to the, back there and click on the group. The group is different than the child. The group is not part of another group. So it's explicitly made part of 0 to 0. And it also currently has no focus, as in we have no entity or resource that represents the group of service requests at the moment. So both of those are currently taken out of play, and the only difference here is the tag, and the tag being assigned to a group. If you go back to base, so this is really most of what was in the old task that we had previously. I haven't changed any of that, except I took out the must supports. I had this thing in my mind where I wasn't going to rewrite the must supports for all of the new resources being proposed, and I kind of took out the ones we'd already agreed on task, as Michael pointed out to me. So those can probably go back in at some point if we all agree that they are both applicable to the group and the children. This is also now an abstract resource or abstract profile. So the intent is you don't create an instance of base. You either create an instance of the group or the fulfillment task. Questions, anyone? If you, I guess, just to proceed, what will come as another part of this conversation is that you notice with the task here that we term this a fulfillment task, and that is fulfillment of, in fact, any request. So it's not solely limited to diagnostic requests. It could also, in theory, be a communication request. And as we start looking at communication requests, we also want to wrap tasks around those as well, because the definition of a task resource is really around the tracking of an activity to fulfill a request. And there's an interesting discussion around whether that request is an explicit request or an implicit request, but nonetheless it tracks through. I've received your request, I've accepted it, I'm currently processing it, and I've completed the request. Jamie.
Hello, just wanted to flag that. So I added back in the must supports that were agreed previously into the base or abstract profile. But in doing that, I did miss something that I wanted to flag while everyone's looking at this. So for focus, the must support should be removed from focus in the base task profile and applied to focus in the fulfillment task. So we're sort of
I actually think that the original proposal removed focus from the base task profile, so there is no must support or typed references for focus in the base profile.
Okay.
So And that's been completely moved to the fulfillment task profile, and it's now mandatory in the fulfillment task. So as we look at the base task profile, differential, there is no focus element. I think that was the original intent, Andy.
Yes.
And in putting the mass support back, we accidentally made this change. So
Yeah.
So let's just go through that. So this is where, focus, isn't needed in the group. So removing it from must support, or completely removing it from the base class was the part of, we didn't specify in the base at all either, so that's okay. Are people comfortable with this approach of essentially moving what we had as task before to an abstract profile now, which is base, and creating the specific fulfillment? Let's go back to repair. I'll just click them. Go back to fulfillment, which the differential on that is making it part of, referring to the group and adding the focus in there, as well as tagging it so we know it's a fulfillment task. And then on the task group, it's not part of, there is no focus, and it's just tagged as the fulfillment task group. But everything else then is taken from the base. So this is our definition of a generic task, which is abstract, but is inherited by those others with those changes.
Is it the intention that task is the lowest level of granularity? Like, we're not going to try and break task down into action steps or anything like that?
Well, we do break it down by the status in theory. So, but if you did require another level of orchestration, at this level, you wouldn't use task. You would start to look at either what was called group task or orchestration, task orchestration, that R5 introduces. So this is really has a very, it's a single purpose, and that is to track the staging of fulfillment, and it doesn't have individual identities for each of those stages.
Yeah, no, good. I like that. I was just making sure, because I guess that's the way I sort of modeled it as well, is to say that I recognize there's a task to be done. I'm not getting into the level of detail yet, but it's just a task that we need to complete. Yeah.
And it's, to be honest, I think task is a really powerful way of supporting a number of different approaches or requirements for handover of care, where the sending and receiving clinical systems need to provide to the users some acknowledgements of the handover process. And this is, in terms of handover or requesting, you really do need, from a clinical safety perspective, often to have a known state in which that handover occurs. So we're going to come across this, I think, also in things like communication. And while things like copy to, which is another thing we looked at, is, in the current V2 world, is simply to say, and please send a result to these as well. You actually have no idea whether those copy tos are successful or not. It is possible in Fire to provide some awareness then of the success or failure of copy tos by wrapping the communication request that we're proposing to use with some tasks to provide you that that tracking. So it is incredibly useful.
Does anyone want to make a motion about accepting these changes? The structure of the task fulfillment and task group.
Do you, I'm not suggesting this, but you're happy not to go down the kind of the must support kind of conversation now, I'm happy not to do that. And the, you know, the conformance.
I think we want to make sure we maintain the decisions we've already made for must support against task, so that the ones, because we've already set things like must support search parameters and the like on task, that I think it's important that we maintain those decisions and they potentially move to the task base or task fulfillment. Yeah, I don't know whether there is a broader conversation about actual how we do obligations, and maybe that is a more holistic thing we do later. But I don't want to go backwards either. I don't want to undo decisions we've already done. Sorry, Jamie.
Was just going to flag. So we just on the not agreeing on must support, perhaps just an explicit agreement that we're happy to move the must support for focus to the fulfillment task profile rather than the base task profile where it previously lived.
Yeah. Then we'll inherit, essentially saying that we'll keep all the stuff we had and then we'll just move that one to the fulfillment task. Yep.
Yep. And also, I guess just a note, same with the other proposal, that there would be some changes that would need to be made so that the profiles aligned with the conventions that we have existing in the IG already. So say, for example, removing the word base from the task base profile, and, you know, changing descriptions and things like that.
Tisha.
Thank you. Sorry, Angus. Did you want to go first?
So I just want, can someone put the URL in chat? Yeah, thanks.
No, I thought I did, but I'm doing it. Right.
I just have a question on the fulfillment task. That's always referencing the group task. Is that the intent? That that the grouping task will always be available?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And it will also pick up, once we talk about communication requests, they too will link into the common requesting task group.
Okay, thank you.
And Andy, since you just mentioned the communication requests, so the AU eRequest task fulfillment will be extended at some point to have focus for communication requests as well, even though it doesn't now.
Yes.
Yep.
Does anyone have any objections or problems with this approach, or what's been sort of walked through today? Because if not, Jamie, you might be best to form a motion that gets this to a state where we can implement it in the IG.
Sure. Would it be okay if I motion them individually so that we can call out the changes that need to be, I guess, specifically agreed for each of the profiles?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can move through this.
And Dushi, can you just listen in to make sure that I'm not missing anything here? So for a eRequesting task or the abstract profile, noting that it will need some adjustments to comply with the conventions that we have existing in the profile in the IG already, I'd like to motion that we have an abstract task profile that will allow other task profiles to derive from it. It will have the previously agreed must support and cardinality constraints that were agreed by the TDG. except for focus, which will be moved to a dependent profile.
Okay.
I think. Yep.
You're going to have to run, or do you want to like to second that?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Any more questions before I launch a poll? I'll launch a poll on this is the creation of a task abstract profile.
+1 for me on this.
Okay.
Still didn't see the link in chat, Michael.
Where my chat's going.
I think you sent it directly to me.
Did I? R2. Everyone in meeting. There we go. Try again. I was sending it, just didn't get there. Okay, I'll just end this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that was 21 plus 1, so 22 affirmative, 0 negative, and 10 abstain. So that motion has passed. Okay, so that gave us the abstract task profile. Which one do we want to do next?
Okay, so next let's do the task fulfillment. So again, allowing for changes that are in alignment with the conventions that are already existing in the IG, I would like to propose a motion to add a new profile, AU eRequesting task fulfillment. And this will hold the cardinality and must support shifted from the existing or the previously agreed task profile for focus. So it will be must support cardinality of 1-to-1. I think that's it. So I'd like to propose a motion to add AU eRequesting task fulfillment as I've just described very briefly.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Michael. No other questions? No. I'll launch the poll.
+1 again.
Okay. And that poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 23 plus 1, so that's 24 affirmative, 0 negative, and 8 abstain. So that motion has passed.
I've got a question on this last one.
Ask her.
Yeah. And just, can I ask why is part of knocked out here? Are we not preventing anyone in the future creating some higher level concept that this order becomes part of? Does that mean you can never have a part of for this group? Isn't there a world where we have request groups in the future that say for this condition, do this group of tasks, and that therefore becomes part of that request group? I'm not proposing we're going to go down that rabbit hole here, but that there feels to me like you've chopped off that ability, and I don't know why.
The problem now is that we would need to, if it's available, we'd need to somehow define the semantics. So what if you do get one now? where we've said nothing about restrictions on part of on groups.
Well, I just ignore it, right? Because it's not. I'm not saying we need to. I'm just saying you can do it, but as a receiver, I've got an obligation to do anything with it. But it might mean something to you, to someone else. Like here, you're just saying you can't do that. It's not allowed.
Yep.
I just seem like, well, why did we just pick out this part of? And so I think we're doing it because the other one did have a part of reference to the group, right? So that was specific. And then I feel like we've come over to this one and just said, oh, don't do that here, so I'm going to knock it out. But you know, that seems a bit misguided. I think part of should be 0, no must support. It's just there, could use it. Don't know what it means if you do use it. But we're not saying
but that's it. What's your use case for having a group task part of another thing?
So I can foresee future hospitals creating protocols around this condition. You should do this set of pathology requests, and then they're going to want to mark those, you know, populate that part of to say this group is part of that plan that we're doing now, and then they're going to go, oh, we can't do that because now that's literally denied. You're not allowed to populate that, and therefore I just don't know what does it achieve by knocking it out. If it's just there and people put stuff there, I don't know what it means, but it might mean something to them, and they can do that.
I think the issue is that it's not just about meaning to you, it's someone else who receives it and what's the meaning to them. And, you know, yes, we could allow for kind of bespoke innovations on doing it, but I guess pretty fundamental things like this, the more we allow for them, the more we introduce opportunities for disconnection in terms of interoperability. If there was some kind of clinical intent behind the grouping or not. I'm not going to die in the ditch in it. It's kind of just a pattern that we have adopted because we, at the moment, don't have any concrete examples of needing it.
So we haven't knocked out task.input, task.output, task.restriction. Like they're all just left hanging. Like, so why is this one? Someone's like specifically said, no, you can't do that.
Because we're currently using we're using part of as part of our structure already. It's like there's other ones we don't even refer to them. They're not even part of our use of task. Whereas this part of has a use, but only a use in a particular context.
Yeah, it doesn't have a use on the group task. It has a use on the fulfillment task.
Yes.
But here it has no use. Yet it feels like you're trying to drive home the fact that don't do what you did on the group fulfillment tasks here.
Yeah.
And that seems like a funny approach that I just see in the future people aren't going to be able to go further because they'll have to come back to us and say, you need to change your standard so we can populate the part of, because apparently we're not allowed to create orders with a part of.
Well, you can create orders as part of, it's just can you have groups that are part of another group?
Yeah. And I'm sort of of the view you can. It doesn't mean anything to me, but because it's not part of the Spark standard, we're not going to define what part of is. It's just you can put a reference there, and as a receiver, I can ignore it.
Or you can leverage it with your exchange partner. So this is what we plan to do with it.
Yeah. Otherwise, my exchange partner is going to send it to me, and I go, no, that's just it. The standard says that's now not a sparked order. And I kind of go to my other point, like task.input, task.output, which I know we're going to use in the future, right? But we haven't knocked them out. Like what we seem to specifically knock this one out as if we have a reason to.
Sounds like a
One of
motion.
you, well, I think one of you need to make a motion. See who wins.
I motion that part of. So I'm trying to think what the alternative. So like, I just don't want to see it there knocked out. It's not defined. It's part of 0 ... What is the original part of?
I think it's a fair approach to not have to knock it out explicitly.
We're not saying populate it, but we're not saying you can't. And we tell implementers, fillers can ignore it. Places don't have to set it. But they could.
Would you like to make a motion?
So I motion that part of is not removed from the profile.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, agree.
But the actual motion is to accept the creation of a eRequesting task group profile with only focus in it. With focus removed from it.
Yeah, and nothing else removed.
Yep.
Is that clear? Jamie, are we going to be right with that? Is that clear enough?
Yes, and just also flagging, as with the others, that there will need to be some changes to follow the conventions from the IG as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? We launch the poll. It's the creation of the task group profile.
Oh, +1.
Close this off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So is there a +1 in there? Sorry, was there?
I think Michael Osborne said +1.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yep. So we've got 19 +1, so we're at 20 affirmative, 1 negative, and 10 abstained. So that motion has passed. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. I do need a few minutes to talk about the next meeting. Andy, did you think you can get through something else in 5 or 6 minutes? We had
I definitely
copy
can't get through copy 2 in that amount of time.
Okay, and the other one was My Health Record upload consent.
Well, I'm hoping that one is less controversial. So
do we want to talk to it? And maybe we'll see if we get to a decision, but otherwise it's just a heads up and we'll go through more detail next week. Happy if that's the one. We've got a feature branch. Do you want to talk to any of this or just go straight into the branch?
No, just go into the branch and look at the attributes. Yep. So the only thing really to note about consent.
Sorry, too many windows. Display sequence. Oh, where to go? Why, that's not one.
R for consent is pretty limited in what you can do. But actually what we're trying to represent here is that you are announcing the withdrawal of consent for upload to My Health Record as opposed to the assumed consent policy model that exists. This is mostly just a way, having looked at some of the examples of international consent use, this is just a way of depicting the artifacts required to represent consent. I don't know if it really matters. The main issue is, from a filler perspective, you need to be able to discover if this is provided. There is a question about whether we should make consent explicit all of the time, or that, so you could both say, I am withdrawing consent, or I am reinforcing consent, or that you say, no, the only thing you can specify is withdrawal. And you'll notice it's a withdrawal because there is the provision is deny, It's affixed at the moment to deny. So it's saying I'm not providing consent as opposed to the way it was specified. And the only other thing is this having a reference to the request. So you're basically in the provision, linking to the request, because this is obviously associated with the report that's generated, but we are explicitly saying don't upload to my health record for this. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I was just going to reiterate here. So yeah, the policy is an opt-in policy, but it's opt-in to deny, right? To withdraw my consent. I think that's probably the key there. Kathleen?
Yeah, I actually think this is a good way of representing it, because from a My Health Record perspective, most large organisations state that they'll be uploading to My Health Record unless you advise them that they're going to withdraw, and then they have to capture that somewhere.
I would say it's important to look at as a filler when you receive this, add all of the information in there. Obviously, we've hard coded a bunch of stuff into this profile. So obviously, we would expect that these consents are going to grow over time. They do make it a little more complicated in discovery because they are not referenced from the service request, a reference to the service request. So they sort of live in isolation, except for their reference. So you've got to pick them up by a reverse include on a search.
Angus?
I just wanted to put on the table that in the current HL7 version 2 electronic ordering, the consent is both ways, like deny or allow. I think I agree with this, that we only need the deny, but I'm just throwing it out there that today, best practice medical director actually also send us, consent not withdrawn. We have leveraged that at Sonic, at least, as we've slowly sort of gone on this journey with My Health Record. Originally, we were only uploading where the consent was allowed, because if we didn't get consent allowed, we were kind of like, well, we don't know whether you even asked the question, right? So I think this is right, but I'm just putting out there that we're making this decision with the understanding that the legacy ordering systems actually do send My Health Record consent allowed or denied.
Kathleen? With an old hand. We'll jump to Jamie.
Just a question from me. So I understand we can't withdraw consent for the report at this point because it doesn't exist. But I just wanted to flag and I guess question if it's appropriate that, so we've got a combination of referring to the diagnostic report. So say, for example, the slice for class is referring to a diagnostic report, and then the data controlled by this rule is referencing a request. And just wanted to check if that's, just flagging it, I guess, and wondering if that's an issue. But I'm not sure of a way around it, given the report doesn't exist at this point of withdrawal.
Yeah, I don't know an answer to that. I don't know any other way of doing it at the moment. I think this is the pattern you have to use. So the data is referencing the only artifact that you have a handle for.
Michael, sorry, Tony here, if you withdraw consent with this to My Health Records, how do you reinstate consent to any other digital format that the patient may request of their own accord? I mean, even with My Health Records, they're allowed to technically opt out, and then what do we do with that population if they say, well, I still want my digital record into a different format?
But isn't this just looking at my health record, and consent for other things is sort of out of scope of this particular discussion?
Yeah, and this is particularly
Specific.
focused on the My Health Record policy setting for
Yeah.
implied consent. Someone in the chat asked about what if we wanted to send the report somewhere else, and this is why we didn't start discussing communication requests now, because there is all sorts of opportunities to give direction to another party to communicate the resulting report to, they could say, please send this to the patient, please send this to the other clinician. How does that overlay into copy 2? What about urgent results? What about the medium or the form on which you want that information to flow? Should you be able to do that as well? So that's a whole other thing. This is only focused on this one very constrained policy setting that at the moment we're obligated to. Coming back to Angus's thing about making this kind of thing explicit, it is an interesting thing that if policy were to change and the My Health Record upload was to move from this existing policy setting, we would have to update every system to reinterpret the implied consent. Whereas when it's explicit, it would already be in play. That's the downside to it, but it's just a note. I don't have an issue with this approach.
Okay, we're pretty much at the end of the meeting, so we'll come back around to this one next meeting. This branch is available. I'll just put it in the chat again. So everyone have a look at it. We'll try and make some decisions on it in the next meeting. I'll also put in the chat here another one which we're going to go through is copy 2. I'll put that in the chat. There's a branch there. You can browse through that. You can look at the communication request here for copy 2. So if you can have a look at those before the next meeting and bring your questions, that would be great. Just for next meetings, so next meeting's on the 13th of February. One thing to note here is that we do have coming up in March, we've got a HL7AU symposium and work group meetings day on Tuesday, the 18th of March. And then the Connectathon the 2 days after that, which will be Wednesday and Thursday. So they're in Sydney. So the HL7A symposium workgroup meeting is proposed for Tuesday in North Sydney in the Microsoft office. And it's the day before the Connectathon. There's an opportunity for us to have a eRequesting TDG on that day. So it'll be face-to-face with seating for approximately 38 people. There'll be hybrid facilities available, I believe, but it'll be Microsoft Teams rather than Zoom. And it would run in parallel with the symposium. So the day is going to be split into quarters of approximately 1.5 hours, so 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And we have the opportunity to take one of those for an eRequesting TDG if we think there's interest in it. So I just like to launch a poll just to get the TDG's intent on wanting to run an additional TDG on that day, which will be face-to-face and hybrid, give us the extra opportunity to get through some more decisions or discuss some meaty issues. So this is really just to gauge intent if people are interested in attending that either in person or through the hybrid facility on that day. So I'll just launch a poll just to, I'll use the generic one. So it's not a vote, it's just intent, but whether you'd be interested. If you're interested in attending that, vote affirmative. Negative if you're not. I don't think we should do it. And obviously abstain if you're not sure. So it's just to get some intent of our interest to run something on that day. And I might just finish that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ending that. So got five affirmative, 1 negative, and 15 abstain. Not sure yet. I'm not sure that's definitive either way. But we'll see whether we organise something for that day. We might come back around to this next meeting as well with some more detail. But thanks for that. Other than that, we'll see you Thursday in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.